Welcome to our Tuesday night soiree here with our Edgar Cayce On series. This evening, dusting one off from the archives. And this is going to be on Edgar Cayce on prayer and meditation. Very important topics in Cayce's life, and very important topics to us as it should be. Okay? And what we're going to need to remember is that we are all a single human family. How we choose to apply in ourselves both prayer and meditation is up to us independently. And a lot of it has to do with the way we are raised and in what particular religion that we were brought up in. So the beginning of this presentation is going to talk about various world religions and some of their aspects of how they pray. From there, we'll segue into meditation. This presentation is based on my interpretation of the Edgar Cayce readings, based on what I have seen, what I have read, what I have experienced. Other sources were in fact used to bolster this simply because I was researching other religions and I don't know all of those facts. The important part here is that the Cayce readings are dynamic in that each individual, while reading them, can read the same thing but may get a totally different takeaway from what they mean to them individually. And this is what Cayce said would happen. It was totally to be expected because it's how we take that which we see, interpret it ourselves, apply it to our personal lives, and then take it forward and go out with it into mainstream life. A lot of people may choose to either accept or reject that which they see and not apply it at all. That's fine. Others will take with it and go. As always, we certainly encourage you to get in, look at these readings, and take away what you find important to them. And if you're so inclined, you too can get up here in front of God and everybody and do this as well. All right. So, prayer and meditation. Very, very key point to each individual's life. It's very mainstream, very personal. Oftentimes, we will use prayer and meditation as a decision-making tool. We will enter a period of meditation with a question in our minds regarding something that we are dealing with on life. Perhaps we will make a prayer asking for divine intervention in some aspect of our lives as well. Meditation in particular, when coupled with prayer, stands to help ground each individual. Because what now you're doing is that you're starting to realize the three bodies, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual body, as Cayce put forth, and letting them become in tune with one another. And when we do this, we start to get a more grounded composure to ourselves, because we're actually using all of the tools available that we actually have. All right? And when we think about how life goes on, we tend to put full emphasis on the physical life. And we are looking for very cause and effect type of outcomes, where everything is about the drama that's going on. But we very, very rarely, unless we get in times of trouble, ask God to join the conversation. Prayer and meditation, when applied on a regular basis, will allow us to become, as Cayce said, companions and co-creators with God. Because this is actually what we are and what we were created to do. When you start looking at why people pray, oftentimes there's something in their life going on. History has told us that post 9/11, population in churches on Sunday increased. We had an element of fear injected into our lives that we had to digest and deal with it. But is that really the only time we should recognize and remember God in our lives? we should strive, I would think, to try to create a balance of all of our mental bodies and take that and go forward, because I can personally tell you that doing that makes life a lot easier. Because now you're able to divorce yourself from a lot of the noise that's out there and focus on what's truly important. Hence, creating a balance within ourselves. Mahatma Gandhi told us that prayer is the very soul and essence of religion, and therefore must be the very core of the life of man. Very interesting, because Gandhi, as we know, is a very spiritual person, but in his statement here regarding prayer, he is tying it directly to religion. We'll see Cayce's definition of prayer here in a little bit, and you'll see that it's similar, but yet strikingly different, a little bit more encompassing. There are many, many world religions out here. We have Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. There's a lot of them out there. And I didn't go through the entire, spectrum to talk about this, but I hit the ones that most people are somewhat familiar with. Tibetan prayer wheels, when we're starting to deal with the Buddhist folks, they use this in a similar structure that a lot of Catholics might use a rosary, okay? And these prayer wheels are various in size. They can go up all the way to 12 foot by 5 foot. And the concept is that people will roll the wheel while repeating a mantra, okay? Now, the mantras are very, very key to Buddhism philosophy, okay? And their main mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, is recited mantra. And it's done while they're spinning the wheel and focusing on the mantra, saying it over and over and over again. And they say that doing that is said to equal in fortune to 1,000 Buddhas. Buddha's their main philosopher for them. Okay? Mantra means mind protection. Not a whole lot different from what Mr. Cayce tells us. Mind is the builder. When you're repeating a mantra, what are you doing? You are playing it over and over and over again in your mind. You're focusing on that. Hence, using our creative powers, we can tend to start creating it by the repetition of the words here. And you can use these mantras for the benefit of others, is how a lot of the folks in following Buddhism do. I've got a very good friend of mine in Austin, and I actually asked her to send me one of these. She sent me a website, then I opened it up and I found out why. They're about $60 to $75 per. She loves him, but not that much. But anyhow, I was going to try to get one to kind of show you what it was, and these mantras are said over and over and over again, and she actually sent me a recording of them and how it's used in their religion. Little kid in the back.
In the last two bullet points, you say mantra means mind protection, and then you say it's used to benefit others. Does that mean that mantras are used to benefit others through protecting their minds, or our minds, or both?
Yeah, it's actually both. The question was, mantra means mind protection and then used to benefit others. What is the association of those? When we're looking at the mantras, we can use our minds to focus on the protection, meaning keeping the outside influences of the impurities away from us, while at the same time, with an open heart of a loving heart, project the mantra to be able to use for the benefit of others. And the case that I saw this actually play out in was when I was talking with her, and I told her I had, some dealing with some cancer issues, and that's when she really got into this. I mean, she started to send me the mantras, and I heard her just, she would sit there and just talk to me on the telephone for 5 minutes and just say the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I thought that was really, really impressive the way that it worked. So I've taken away from that, the meaning of this with them and how they apply it in their belief system. And with Cayce, as you will see in the meditation, one of his key points is to do a prayer of protection to keep outside influences away from what we're trying to do. And like meditation, mantras can also be used for the benefit of others, because Cayce tells us that at the end we should transfer that energy from ourselves and share with others. Okay. Japa mala beads. This now is getting into our friends in Hindu. The bead structure is 108 beads. And again, in similar fashion to the Christian rosary, they use them while chanting and citing mantras. Now, if you remember, if those of you who've had any experience in Catholicism and rosaries, each bead represents a special prayer or thought pattern, okay? So this is very, very similar over it. These are structured to be placed over the right hand. And in the rotation of the beads, the index finger is not to be used. In Hindu thought, the index finger is a reflection of the human ego, something to be sequestered. And when you think about how we use the index finger, oftentimes we use it to point at ourselves or tell somebody that we are number one. So it's oftentimes egocentric in its use. Hence the folks who follow Hindu do not use it. They drape it over their hand and use the other fingers while avoiding contact with the index finger. I thought that to be pretty interesting. The rationale for trying to sequester the ego with this is in that it does, in fact, hinder self-realization. Cayce tells us the same thing. Our egos are our own worst enemies. We do things for self-satisfaction, self-gratification, as opposed to looking at the bigger picture and using ourselves to be a benefit of others. We look for taking everything in. It's all about me. Gimme, 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 you see. And when we start to do this, then the realization of to know ourselves, to be ourselves, is tremendously shrunken down. Islamic prayer has gotten a lot of playtime since 9/11. A lot of folks wasn't familiar with it prior to then, but now it is. Those following Islam are in a ritualized prayer pose 5 times per day. They have to attain certain postures, certain poses, while they're praying at predetermined times of the day. It's very important to them that cleanliness is maintained. Their prayer area needs to be clean. Their bodies need to be clean. Their main holy day is on Friday. This is when they congregate at their places of worship. And interestingly, they prefer to keep men praying differently from the women, simply because of the structure of that type of society. And it's a very regimented society. So men are inside the mosques, women are elsewhere, but they're not necessarily, to the maximum extent possible, cohabitating with each other. And that was simply taboo in that lifestyle. They have a dua is a supplication or a special intention, and that they believe that God created mankind for no other reason than to glorify God. Well, that's similar to what Cayce says, is that we should adopt a mindset that we do with our actions glorify God. And if we look around in everything that we see, looking at nature, looking at a sunset or a sunrise, and we are taken back with the beauty or the intricacies of nature, and we are awed by that which we see, then whatever brought that to us is glorifying God, because it brought benefit to somebody else. I think there's a really, really interesting thing to look at. Jerusalem's Wailing Wall. This is an interesting thing. The western wall of the Temple Mount is the holiest site in Judaism. Very, very important to their lives. It is perceived that the west wall was the closest to the Holy of Holies, thus beneficial for all to pray there. And what we'll see is oftentimes folks will go there and they'll actually take small pieces of paper and put them into the cracks in the wall as a, requirement, or not a requirement, but a gratitude to God for what they've been given and what they would also ask. Now, interestingly, in case of anybody who needs to go get married or something, a well-known remedy to find one's mate is to pray 40 consecutive days at the wall. Or go to Match.com. But this is in their tradition, that this is what they're going to do. They're going to go for 40 straight days with the intent and pray to God that find me the mate that you would have me meet and live life with. So it's all very, very structured to them, because it's the holiest place, and Jerusalem is very interesting in that it's Islam, Judaism, Christianity are all cohabitating in one area. And for the by and large, it's relatively a peaceful place, for the most part. But this is where they go for the Jewish folks to go in and, seek and be gratitude, thankful for all the divine intervention that they have received. Pretty interesting. And now we have the Christian prayer, that which we may be a little bit more familiar with here. Christian prayer, too, like all other religions, is an important part of the religion structure, okay? Prayer can be both formal or informal. When we go to a religious service, then it tends to be a structured delivery where the certain words are said certain ways. Alternatively, when we put it within ourselves and we pray independently, there's a little bit more of an unstructured variation to it, because what we're doing is that we are petitioning God for in and of ourselves and not following all the words by rote. A lot of different types of Christian prayer is out there. We have prayers of thanksgiving. We have prayers of peace. We have prayers for the dead. We have intercessory prayers, etc. A lot of different types of prayers that we're trying to relay to God. The Lord's Prayer is the benchmark Christian prayer of adoration, confession, and petition. It's very mainstream throughout all elements of Christianity. Interesting, you'll see what Cayce's take of that is here in a little bit, because I have actually included it in this deal. We said that Gandhi tells us that prayer was the essence of religion. Okay? Well, prayer is not necessarily telling God what to do, but rather inviting the Spirit of God to flow through us to someone in need as an expression of love. That's certainly one way of doing it. Have you ever prayed for someone who is sick? Have you ever prayed with someone who is facing trials and tribulations in their life, or a very decision-critical point in life? Yeah, we all do this. And we're not asking them to do, but rather, please, work with us. Cayce tells us in the 281.13 readings, 281 is actually the prayer group, or the healing group that they put together. And he tells us to be not as the Pharisees, who love to be seen of men, who make long dissertation or prayer to be heard of men. They immediately have their reward in the physical mental mind. Be rather as he that entered the temple, and not so much as lifting his eyes, smote his breast, and said, God be merciful to me, a sinner. We talk about Pharisees in the New Testament. And in this case, the gentleman, the Pharisee, made a big production about being at church. And thank God I'm not like other men. I'm not a thief, a murderer, an adulterer, or anything of that effect. I am better than they. And the intent, Cayce tells us, was in that he was wanting to be seen by men who would admire him. He also says, when we do that, we immediately get our reward. Because we're going to convey that. We are wanting to impart our perception of ourselves on others. That will immediately happen. Hence, the reward is given. Whereas this gentleman down here, God be merciful to me, a sinner, is deferring his petition to God for God to help him as he best sees fit. He's not trying to impress anybody. He's just going about his business. Now, the other thing about the Pharisees, and Cayce was very fair in a lot of these things, he said, the man was a good man. He did and upheld his offices. He did everything that he would. He provided counsel. He upheld, the Judaism laws. He did everything he was supposed to be. And it's a reflection that we're all people, because we also do these things ourselves. There's going to be times that the ego is going to want to sneak out on us and toot our own horns a little bit. And there's going to be times when we should pull ourselves back in. But, the fact that we go out and toot our own horn doesn't make us a bad person, does it? I don't think so. And so we have to put it all in the whole. When we see people who like to be a little bit more verbose about how they are performing life for all to see, got to take it with a grain of salt, because it is an opportunity for us to be judgmental, which we maybe not should do. Now, here's Cayce's definition. As it has been defined or given in an illustrated manner by the great teacher, prayer is the making of one's conscious self more in tune with the spiritual forces that may manifest in a material world. The mind is the builder. We are trying to attune ourselves, attain at-one-ment with the creative forces that will be here to help us, to guide us our way through. Hence, we're not looking at any specific religion, but rather dealing with life in general. Through the attunement and the atonement of ourselves with the creative forces, now we are opening ourselves to God's guidance so that we can, in fact, go forth in confidence, in love, and do things that He would have us do, not what we want to do, but rather what He would have us do. And it requires us to take on a different mental attitude. And it requires work. It's not an easy thing to do if one has not been brought up in it and doing it. And I would argue that even if somebody has been brought up in it all their lives, they've got to address the matter on their own terms and deal with their own material world and try to find balance between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, while at the same time being in this world and not necessarily of it. Influences on prayer. Gives us attitudes towards self and others. We're praying for somebody. It comes down to what is the intent. Why are we doing this? What are we trying to do? Cayce tells us oftentimes that the manner in which we treat our fellow man is the manner in which we treat God. Because they have their soul born the same time we do. We're all hatched the same time. Each person is down here with the idea of trying to reestablish the relationship with God. Some may do a little bit better at it than others. Consequently, we're all here doing the same thing at the same time. The manner in which we do it will certainly differ. The alignment of wills. Your will, Lord, not mine. As you would have me do. Open ourselves up to His guidance. When we do this, we are actually starting to get the bigger picture. Because in our finite minds, when we look at life circumstances, we do not have the full viewpoints of everything that's in play at that given time. We're only very monocular looking at a certain aspect of it. Whereas God, on the other hand, allows us to perhaps take a different viewpoint and say, you know, maybe you should think about this. And from there, we are starting to expand our horizons, as opposed to being very, very, just have the blinders on and running down the horseway there. When we pray, sincerity and patience is important. Sincerity and patience is important. To me, what are you trying to do? Is it for your personal betterment? Or is there a rationale that will enable you to do something for somebody else with what you want? Let's take healing, for example. Oftentimes, we discover religion when we get sick of a magnitude of some sort. Question B is, oh, God, help me get me over this. I said, okay. But what are you going to do with it now that you're healed? You see, so we have an opportunity by our healing to now go in and perhaps make a change. So it's an opportunity for us to be sincere and to be patient, remaining open to whatever the answer is. When we pray, God hears our prayers, and the answer is going to be yes, no, or wait. Humans are long on patience. We need to practice patience because perhaps what we're asking for, in our minds, we want right now. But in God's viewpoint, perhaps it's not in our best interest to grant that which we are asking at this point in time. Again, we do not have a full playbook as He does. Consequently, we've got to be good with the outcome. All we can do is put it forward with a sincere pleading and an open heart and open mind, and His will shall be done. Doesn't mean that if you didn't get what you want, that He don't love you. It just means that the answer is no at this point. And I will tell you, there's a lot of times in my life that I wanted certain things, but I didn't get them. And then, fast forward, months, years later, I see how that situation could have played out and say, man, I'm glad I didn't get that. Because it wouldn't have worked so good. Then I would have to deal with this stuff. You know, so God, infinite wisdom there, kind of pulled me out of the fire before I stuck myself in it. Because it seemed like a good idea at the time. But hindsight being 20/20. And the final one down here. This is an interesting one here. Live as you pray. Live as you pray. I think a lot of times people's degree, if they are more of a religious ilk than a spiritual ilk, is that of a part-timer. If it's convenient for them, or if they're in need of something, then they'll go. For example, a lot of folks go to church on Easter and Christmas, as opposed to every Sunday when it's open. Again, part-timer. When do I pray? Well, I pray when I need something. Just listening to that answer, when I need something. Well, quite honestly, we need something every minute of every day. We really do. It's by God's grace and mercy that we have that which we have. Because everything that we have, whether it is of any material substance or not, has its origins in the same source. It's been on loan from God. A lot of us don't realize it because of the egocentric mindset that we have and say, well, I did this or I did that, I got this, I got that. It may seem to you that it was all about you, But at the end of the day, it was through God's grace that this happened. That is part of the sincerity. And if we live like we pray, then we need to understand that praying is the atonement, the balance of getting ourselves on the same page with God. And it doesn't only mean that we need to be on page with God when we're praying. We need to go live life in the mainstream as if God's right there with us, as a partner, as a companion, as it was meant to be. And quite honestly, life gets a lot easier when you pull that off. Because now you are removing a lot of burdens from yourself. You're removing a lot of worry. You adopt a level of trust and faith that God will get you through it. Kind of like standing up here in front of a camera and people and talking, you know? A lot of that kind of happens sometimes. Because this ain't me. There was a prayer said out there in the parking lot. I said, God, get me through this. You know? Channel to me that which you want me to hear, that these folks here need to hear. And then I opened myself up to it. And then I let it come in. And that's living life, because I guarantee you, it's not hard to sit up here and do this. Because it's powered by the source of ever ready. Always there. 1967-1. And above all, pray. Those who are about the body rely upon the spiritual forces. For the prayer of the righteous shall save the sick. When we're starting to deal with this, there's people who are going to be sick. We have their wills to consider. But what we can best hope for is not necessarily be a healing, but how about comfort? And if we are able to have people who are in a physically bad way comforted, then are we actually, in some manner, saving the sick? Because now the burden is released from them. And then they are able to deal with that which they have. Healing and prayer is very, very interesting, because there's two parts of it. You can pray the cows come home, that somebody going to get better. That's all well and intended. But the fact of the matter is, the person who is ill has to want to get better. And if they don't want to get better, then friend, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. Because again, the mind is the builder. They're at a certain point in life where perhaps they choose to check out. They're done. Oftentimes I see that with the elderly, because life changes for them. Their bodies start to degrade. Things that they used to do readily and with a lot of ease now are struggles. It's very problematic. The quality of life degrades to such a point that they say, you know what, I'm done. I saw that with my dad. He was done. And he was done. And the body did it. So the mindset was, we ain't going to pray for healing because he don't want it. Rather, we're just going to pray that he's comfortable, because that's the best that we can hope for. And that's what we did. This is a verbose one from 281.9. Question: please differentiate the difference in that we are told to pray for others, whilst again we are told there must be the desire on the part of one to be wanting to be helped or healed. Answer: the prayer for others is as the defense against influences that would hinder. The prayer and meditation and the unison of purpose for healing is as against an offense committed in the body to be overcome, or made every whit whole by his cleansing, forgiving, his life-giving power. Hence, the closer the union of purpose makes that as he gave, thy faith has made thee whole. A lot of influence is going on here. Were we to put on a spiritual blacklight, you'd be appalled at how many people are in here. Because there's a lot of influences from all over that are coming in. And if you ever had something pop into your mind and you wonder, where did that come from? Chances are there was, for weal or for woe, an influence that came in and interacted with you. Okay? So when it comes down here, is what we're trying to do is to, when we're praying for others, is to, look, give them their comfort, give them that which they need and seek at this time. Your will be done. Thus, the faith is going to make them whole. Because now you're working in unison with God and not trying to impart your will upon anyone else. Prayer for peace is an interesting one, and this is one of those that truly resonate with me for a lot of reasons. Because when we're starting to pray for peace, the question becomes, are we doing it individually or are we doing it collectively? And if we are praying for peace, then that implies opposing forces going at it somewhere else. And we are asking for peace, which means that there has to be two sides to the story. When you talk about life here on earth, now we're getting into a national mindset. You think about what the national mindset was post 9/11. I don't think it was full of love. I'm thinking it was a mindset where people wanted a little bit of, let's just say, revenge. And the people got it. They wanted it in their minds, and it came. The petitioners, however, are often more powerful than the combatants. Because oftentimes the people who are doing the combating really don't want to be there. They had other places they would much rather be than sitting there sniping at other people. This reading refers to World War II. Cayce gave it on the 30th of May, 1942. The question was posed to him, based on present conditions, will the forces advise us when the fighting will stop? Answer, this is dependent upon many things. It could be over. It is possible for it to be over by the 30th of September. But this would require a united effort on the part of those who pray more than those who shoot. And they are not ready for it yet. That is a very powerful statement. That's a very powerful statement. This war could have been over 3 years earlier. However, perhaps national vindictiveness wanted people to go in and do it the hard way. People wanted to rather shoot than pray. Granted, there was a lot of prayer going on. But those who shoot were driving the forces. Consequently, we had to lose innumerable lives over the next 3 years because we chose not to collectively pray. 39:76:23. Cayce says, rather was it not the prayers of the mothers and the fathers of each nation represented there, that there might not be that destruction of human life which would be the natural outcome of open conflict? For as the people of each nation pray and live that prayer, so must the Spirit work. Phrased differently, you gotta have to want it. And it has to be a collective effort. For as the people of each nation pray and live that prayer, and live that prayer. If you want to pray for peace and you want peace, then you're going to have to live it. What does that mean? That means mentally, physically, and spiritually. You've got to take it and then put it into this life and go forward with it. It cannot be remaining bottled up within you. It has to be something that collectively we all want, we all desire. Then it can come out. The second part of that problem is man likes to have winners and losers. Consequently, we have to want it on our terms. You know, there's both sides in a battle there. Looking for win-win type of situations will enable the peace effort to actually take hold. Because if people realize that it's not necessarily an abdication or admission of loss, but rather a different way of now conducting business, then maybe they'll be a lot more open to going in and promoting the peace works. What is meditation? Well, the 281 readings tell us that meditation then is prayer. But it is prayer from within the inner self, and partakes not only of the physical inner man, but the soul that is aroused by the spirit of man from within. This is a focus on getting in and knowing and listening to the small voice within. When we tap into the small voice within, then we are now starting to open the door where we are having a little bit more of communication with God. And what we are trying to do in this is to silence our active mind and focus in on what's coming in within us, because from our souls, we know everything that there is to be known. Our souls already know this. We've got to learn to listen to it. And the reason that we don't is because of our physical conscious minds and our egotistical selves, egocentric selves, I should say, that are driving us to wanting to do this, this, and this for the benefit of me and me alone. Okay, and consequently, Cayce tells us that's not how the game is played. In conjunction with meditation, there is, and Cayce has cross-referenced our various spiritual centers called chakras. These are also glands of the human body. And it ties all of these together, and through meditation, we can actually activate the physical reactions of these different centers that we each have within us. Now, it's very interesting because in and of this, if you get into the study of the book of Revelation, this comes back into play again. And it's a really, really interesting topic of discussion. And when we start looking at all of these and we try to intentionally activate these, then what we are doing, we are now raising the forces within ourselves, will enable us to overcome the things of this earth. Now, okay, there's 7 of these. You have your root chakra, okay? Down at the bottom, this is your reproduction gland. You have the cells of Leydig right above it. The solar plexus, very, very important. The thymus, which is the heart. These are, as Cayce tells us in the book of Revelation, things of the earth. Whereas we get a little bit higher, we talk about the throat chakra, which is up in here. We have the crown, and we have the third eye, the pituitary and pineal glands. This represents the higher forces. Hence, these are things that we in our lives should try to overcome, thus focus on things up in here. Cayce tells us that of the 7 chakras, that our souls actually reside between the 2nd and 6th chakra. The 6th chakra would be here, the 2nd would be right about here. This is where the soul is hanging out on each and every one of us. Okay? This is where he tells us it actually is. And this is what he terms to be the seat of our soul. This is what we're carrying around with us, because our human bodies are, in essence, vehicles for transport for the soul. Once the vehicle breaks down, we get rid of it, the soul goes on, goes find another vehicle, trades you in for a younger model. These are the endocrine glands that we're looking at. Very, very important. They secrete hormones into the bloodstreams. Meditation affects these centers and will increase and activate the glands and increase our vibrations. Because when we start to activate them, then what we're seeing is what's called the energy forces within us. And Cayce talks about the silver cord that pretty much runs right up our spinal cord. And we can actually activate the levels of lower energy and bring them forward with meditation, and then bring them back around. Okay? Cayce was very specific on how we should prepare ourselves to do meditations. We must recognize that this is not to be something taken lightly. We've got to do it with purpose. It has to be the right purpose. Because what we are actually tapping into is our own personal power sources. And what we're attempting to do is glean a better understanding. And if we do it with proper thought, then the things that we are creating in our minds are going to come into fruition a lot better. Cayce does tell us that there are certain steps that we should take to properly prepare ourselves. We need to do self-preparation. Prayer is important prior to going into meditation. Proper breathing and incantations. All of these things work together to activate the spiritual cells within us to be able to have and give to us a meaningful higher level of vibration. When it comes to self-preparation, Cayce advises, cleanse the body with pure water. Okay? Get yourself clean. Where did we see that before? Islam? All right? You see how all this is kind of coming together again? Yeah. All right? Islam was very important about cleanliness is there. Balance the respiratory system. Breathe. Breathe. Got to learn improper breathing. Look for your olfactory and audible stimulation. That means maybe if you would like, find a pleasant sense, incense or something to that effect, a candle. Maybe you put on, some music that you find soothing to you. All of this helps the relaxation of the physical body, so it becomes easier to focus in on our spiritual bodies. And then we lay aside our carnal influences. We divorce ourselves from this world. We take a moment, we say, okay, I've got all this crap going on in life. Time out. Put it off to the side. Then let's focus on what's truly important. Then, after our meditation, these things will soon to be back with us. However, now we'll have perhaps a different perspective on how to deal with them, which is very important itself. 281:13, find that which is to yourself the more certain way to your consciousness of purifying body and mind before ye attempt to enter into meditation. Again, he is not laying out specific things that we must do step by step by step by step, but rather it defers to us. Find that which is to yourself, how you, in your own minds, choose to purify your mind and your body. If you're good with it, then go with it. Okay, there's a lot of different ways of doing things. And he's telling us, find that which to yourself, to your own self be true. All right? Know yourself to be yourself, yet part one of the whole. So what works for you is going to be fine. All right? There's no, pecking order here. Find what works for you. A prayer of protection is good because now what's going to happen is what we're doing is we're laying away our consciousness, and now the spiritual forces are coming in. We want to make sure that we have the right forces coming in. What Cayce is talking about here is to be able to surround ourselves with the meaning of the words of our prayers, and basically invoking God and Christ in us to wrap about us the protection of God consciousness and the thought of the Christ consciousness. And when we do that, what we're doing, we're putting ourselves in the midst of God's wrap, his arms. If he's protecting us, what can harm us? Nothing. And then we have a thought with the Christ consciousness coming in. And what this is going to do, when we do this and we're sincere about it, it gives us a means to be able to shield ourselves against negative influences and vibrations. Because it's quite easy for things to get caught up. How many of you had tried to meditate before only to find yourself worried about the things at the office or life in general? You see? And what happens is that these are the influences that are coming in and interfering with your ability to come in and fully relax. So we've got to make a conscious effort to do this. And by invoking God and the Christ within this, then it serves as a barrier to help us achieve that which we are trying to do. The Lord's Prayer. Now, this is where it comes into our chakras. He tells us after reciting the prayer of protection that we should recite the Lord's Prayer. And Cayce gives us specific guidance to connect the words of the Lord's Prayer to our spiritual centers, to invoke them, to energize them, to activate them. And then what we're trying to do when we do this, we're activating our physical bodies within the context of our spiritual bodies. Now, this comes from 378:44. And this is the prayer that Cayce gave in this specific reading. Now, a little background on this. This reading, the 378:44, is an extremely short reading. And at this time, the individual, 378, was missing and did not know where 378 was. 378 also went missing under the premise that he was going to commit suicide. The family came in and Cayce's consciousness contacted his consciousness and found that he was still alive. He was in an area where there was green, meaning he was out in the trees in the woods. And when he laid this out here, what he was talking about said that these are the words as he recited them in conjunction with the chakras. Our Father who art in heaven, right here. Okay? Hallowed be thy name, the crown. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Thy will, right here, the throat chakras, okay? Thyroid area. As in heaven, so on the earth, which is this area down in here. This is all the earthly things to come out. Where do we get in trouble? Right here. Give us for tomorrow the needs of the body, right? Our basic root needs. Forget those trespasses as we forgive those that have trespassed and do trespass against us. It's right here in the solar plexus. Think about this. Whenever you have grief with somebody, right, you're teed off or ticked off at somebody, has you ever achieved a knot in your stomach? That's all of this negativity building up right there. Because you're not letting it go. And this is the purpose of the prayers, to let this go. Continuing. Be thou the guide in the time of trouble, turmoil, and temptation. This is number 2. Lead us in paths of righteousness up here on the heart. Do it with the heart for the right reason. For thy name's sake. And this is the Lord's Prayer given by Cayce in this reading, and how it attaches to all 7 of our chakras up here. To invoke in them. Very, very powerful stuff. Because our doctrine system is very key to our physical survival. And if we allow it to become polluted with negativity, then certainly illness and dis-ease shall follow. And then you get to spend the rest of your life popping pills, because everything's better with medicine, better living through chemistry. Proper breathing, Cayce also says, is important to us. It's a form of cleansing, and it also releases physical tension and helps us to relax the body. And when we do this, what we're actually trying to do is attune ourselves to the universal consciousness. And it's very similar to using our energies from the lower chakras and bringing them up to the top, and then letting them flow back down with the cleansing. And this is what Cayce said is key to thinking this. So while you're doing the proper breathing techniques that he outlines, then this is what we should be looking at doing here. He suggests cleansing the body with pure water. Sit or lie in an easy position without binding garments about the body. When Cayce was doing his readings, he loosened his tie, loosened his breeches, and it was relaxed, and he would lay down and be able to do this. This here tells us to find an easy position for us. You don't have to be sitting cross-legged and doing all this other stuff unless you want to. Okay, Cayce said this is fine. Relax, have clothing relaxed so that you're able to flow and move. Then breathe in through the right nostril 3 times and exhale through the mouth. Okay? Right nostril. Breathe in first, exhale through the mouth. Then breathe in 3 times through the left nostril and exhale through the right. And this creates a best of breathing. Okay? You're using both sides of your nasal cavities to inhale and exhale, as well as your mouth. Okay? Start with right, then left. Okay? Right, and exhale through the mouth, left, and exhale through the right. This creates it. And when you're doing this, feel the energy come up from the lower parts of your body, up around, and wrap itself all the way around. And on the exhalation, feel the cleansing go through. And this will help lead to relaxation, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning. All right? The incantation of Om. This helps us to activate vibrations and to open the chakras from lower to higher. Think about what we learned. Our lower chakras are things of the earth, things to overcome. When we bring the energy levels to a higher vibration, then we are doing the things that we need to do. We're starting to learn to gradually overcome the various challenges that we have here on the earth. And this is very similar to creating a flow of energy. By getting the vibrations opening, then the energy is able to come up here and raise up to go higher. This has been traced back to ancient Egypt. This is one of the things that they actually focused on in one of their practices. And it's a musical scale. It's a vibration of Om. Now, Cayce gives us a couple of ways of looking at this. In order to activate these, there's the 7 chakras that we can use. And it's a matter of using Ah as in spa. Like Ah, then Ledig would be A as in able. Ah, A, and then E, I, O, and M. So it just goes through there. And when you go through it and you do the whole thing, you can actually feel the stuff move inside. And it's a cool feeling. Because now you can just feel your vibrations start to go up. And all you're doing is these words right here. A-I-O. You know, it's all your vowels. All right? A-I-O-U. All right? And sometimes Y. Okay? But when you do this, then you can feel that these are activating. And it creates the energy within. And then you're able to actually bring it higher and higher and higher. And then the last one, when you hit up here, you get the little thing going up in here, the little vibrations. Little kid in the back.
You've got the Cayce order on there as far as the root to the pituitary being the order of the chakras there, but Hinduism has those last 2 reversed.
Reversed, right. Right. Yeah, there is, based on what your school of thought is, these may not always be in here. Cayce was very specific in laying these out here, in that the question was actually posed to him about, people saying, well, this is the upper one and this is the lower one, and specifically with medical science and how they were actually putting them in the physical body. And Cayce flat out told him, I said, we ain't telling medical science what to do, we're telling you what to do. So that is, again, is what you want to behold and take. And this is, as you said, this is in fact the Cayce way of doing it. However, it's not necessarily a universally acceptable way, because some people, like as you mentioned, will flip-flop them. Yes?
You remember you talked about the shepherd's crook in the 23rd Psalm as far as why it went to the crown chakra and flowed over.
Right. Yeah, very similar, because you can take the whole thing as to the shepherd's staff, and that's kind of what it looks like. And then, when it comes over, now which historical figure is associated with being a shepherd? Yeah, exactly. So there's all these correlations that kind of come in, all this little symbolism, or as I like to say, things hiding in plain sight, for us to view. Now, with respect to the same topic here, Cayce talks us here that for, as has been indicated from the innate experience, as well as from the longings within, a home with all its deeper inner meanings, is a portion of the entity's desire to know, to experience, to have the feel of, to have the surroundings of that implied by by the word home. Is it any wonder then that in all of thy meditation, Om has ever been, is ever a portion of that which raises self to the highest influence and the highest vibrations throughout its whole being that may be experienced by the entity? What he's tying in here is the word home. If you've ever been away from home, for whatever reason, oftentimes it's a good thing to come back to, isn't it? If you've been in the military for many years, you want to go home. If you've been on the road for many days, you want to go home into the comfort, your security, the things that you know. Cayce's telling us that on a spiritual being here, this is the same thing. When you're elevating your spiritual selves, you're going home. Your soul is actually going back to where it knows it needs to be, where it wants to be, the security of itself. And thus it's all coming together at the same point in time. Home, and it's the same tonation. Oftentimes when I'm doing this, sometimes it reminds me of the old telephone, so much nobody has anymore, but you used to be able to pick up a telephone, and what did you have? A dial tone. It was a steady tone, wasn't it? All right? It's kind of like the same way. You can pretty much relate it to that too. You're waiting for somebody on the other end. Are you talking about the phone booth between the ears and looking at that, or are you looking to make a physical contact? Same thing. And then finally, we're about sending the energy. Sending energy. Meditative energy that we gain through our meditation techniques is not for us and us alone. It's not for us to be kept. We must share this energy with those in need and those others. For as we give, so shall we receive. 281.5. Just as has been given, the nearer one, a body, this body, draws to that complete consciousness that is in him, the greater may be the power that is manifested through his presence in the world through that as is brought about in self's own experience. The more forceful, the more helpful does the body become at such and through such experiences. Let these remain a sacred experiences, gathering more and more of the same, but it is given out, so does it come. And what he's telling us, so you're getting a lot of benefit from your meditation. Share it. Channel it to somebody who you see needs. Feel that energy, that light, expanding out into your circle of friends, your families, into your communities, whatever you so choose to do with it. But you can't be bogarting it. You got to let it go, and you got to share it. It's not meant to be kept in and of yourself. Take it and use it for the betterment of others in some way. And don't necessarily direct it for a specific cause. Turn it over and say, "Dear Lord, please use this energy in this area as you see best fit." Let somebody who's got the whole playbook figure out how they want to use it. You're just serving yourself as a channel to be able to extend it from you to others with love.